Hi, I'm Mark Van Extension Weed Specialist at the University of Delaware. I'm also one of the authors of the Mid-Atlantic Field Crop Weed Management Guide. This is an excellent publication as a resource for anyone trying to control weeds in their grain crops. It provides local research-based information collected from trials done here at the University of Delaware, West Virginia University, University of Maryland, Virginia Tech, Penn State, and Rutgers University. What I'd like to do is walk through an example of how you might use these guides when you're trying to compare two different premixed herbicides that have similar herbicide active ingredients.
Mark, I want to use an integrated weed management approach to control the ALS-resistant redroot pigweed and large crabgrass in my field. So I was thinking of using something with esmetolachlor, either Boundary or Authority Elite. Any thoughts on which products to use?
Well, they both, as you mentioned, they both contain esmetolachlor. The Boundary has esmetolachlor plus metribuzin, and the Authority Elite has esmetolachlor and sulfentrazone. So, while these prepackaged mixes, we know what's in them as far as AIs, oftentimes it's just as important to know what the rate that's in these products. So let's look at this a little bit further. What's your soil type?
My soil is a loam with 1.3% organic matter, and I'll be planting soybeans no-till.
Okay. Well, if we look at the label here for Boundary and for Authority Elite, we see that the rate range for Authority Elite is 25 to 32 fluid ounces, and for Boundary, it's 2.1 to 3 pints per acre. Now, if we look a little bit closer at the Weed Management Guide on table 4-2, we see that for Authority Elite at 28 fluid ounces, we'd be getting 1.5 pints of Dual Magnum and just about 5 ounces of Spartan. With the Boundary at 2 pints, we'll get the equivalent of about 1.4 pints of Dual and about 7 ounces of metribuzin. But let's look at this a little bit closer. The Dual Magnum labeled rate is 1.3 to 1.7 pints, and in table 4.9 of the guide, it recommends we use about 1.3 pints of Dual. The Spartan rate for your soil is about 6 to 8 fluid ounces, and we're suggesting about 8 fluid ounces. Metribuzin, the label recommends 8 ounces of product. However, with your loam soils, you're going to be close to that 50% sand, and in which case I would prefer not to use any more than 5 ounces of this product because of potential crop injury. So if we adjust the Boundary rate to limit metribuzin to 5 ounces, we end up with only 1 pint of Dual, which is almost half a pint less Dual than what we recommend for these soil types. So with the information we have, I would recommend the Spartan or the Authority Elite over the Boundary because you'll get that full rate of Dual that you really need. Now, you also mentioned you're interested from an integrated weed management strategy, and so far we've basically been talking about different chemicals. But so let's look at this from a more integrated approach. What was in your field last year?
Corn.
Corn. Okay. So corn, you're rotating crops. You have a slightly different planting date, which helps to attack weeds at different life cycles. Not huge differences, but a little bit. What about from a weed control strategy last year? What did you use for weed control?
I used Lumax CZ.
So again, you had some Dual, had some atrazine, but probably more importantly, you had the Callisto portion or the bisatrione, which is a different active ingredient, different mechanism of action, which will help with the resistance management. What weed problems did you have last year?
The biggest issue is the ALS-resistant pigweeds and large crabgrass. I had some horse nettle, but I treated that with glyphosate after the corn harvest last year.
Okay. One of the big things we can do is just limit the seed production of these summer annuals. The less weed seeds that are going into the soil seed bank, the better long-term control you're going to end up with. What about your row spacing for soybeans?
I'll be planting in 15-inch rows.
Okay, that's good. 15-inch rows, the canopy forms a lot faster than it does in 30-inch rows for soybeans, and the quicker we can get a soybean canopy developing, the better integrated approach we're going to have. The better shading we're going to have, the better weed control we'll ultimately end up with. So that's a good idea. Looking to next year, what do you intend to do next year in the field?
I'll be going back to corn.
Okay. So, you're going back to a crop that's planted at a slightly different time, which again will help. You'll have an opportunity to use different mechanisms of action as far as herbicides would help. If you're concerned about really attacking these weeds from an integrated strategy, one potential thought is to include a small grain in that rotation, which will give you an opportunity to control these summer annuals at a very different time in their life cycle, treating them after wheat before you plant your double crop soybeans. What about cover crops? Are you using cover crops?
Yes, I'll be planting rye after the soybean harvest.
Okay. So the rye residue on the soil surface in the spring will help with suppressing some of the summer annuals. The longer you let that cover crop grow, the more suppression you're going to get. With rye before corn, a lot of times that's burned down fairly soon, usually in late March, early April, so you get your corn planted timely. So the weed control from that rye will be minimal, as long as you're aware of that. The other thing is the rye cover crop. There's been some work showing that it does favor the ground beetles, which use weed seeds on the soil surface as a food source. So that can be a biological control. Nothing we can manipulate. It's just we've seen that in trials over the years that with cover crops we have more ground beetles, more weed seed feeding. And I guess what about scouting?
I'm doing my own scouting. I have a scouting schedule based on the previous 3 years of data to help keep track of new weeds and new growth, as well as scouting for insects and fertility issues.
Okay. So you're on a good point for integrated weed management. Like many things, you can always push it a little bit further and integrate other non-chemical strategies in there, which is going to help take the pressure off the herbicides, allow the herbicides to be more consistent in their effectiveness. But you're certainly moving in the right direction. So with your initial question, I'd go with the Authority Elite, and I'd be looking for more ways to incorporate non-chemical strategies into your program.
Thank you.
And to find out more about how to implement a more comprehensive strategy for integrated weed management, check out the resources here at the integratedweedmanagement.org website. The herbicide information from this video is in the Mid-Atlantic Field Crop Weed Management Guide, which is updated every year. The cost is $25 for a print version, $15 for an enhanced PDF, or for $35 you can buy a bundled set. There's also a free version of a low-resolution PDF available at the University of Delaware Weed Science website.